There's a jar of soap on my shelf that cost me nothing. Not close to nothing. Nothing. One ingredient was beside my fireplace. The other was in my kitchen. I was going to throw one of them away. It cleans. It lathers. It feels better on my skin than most things I've paid for. And the raw material is sitting next to your fireplace right now. This is the soap the Vikings used. The soap frontier families made from scratch every autumn. I'm going to show you exactly how to make it. And I'll be straight with you about what you'll end up with, because most videos on this either skip that part or get it wrong. You already know what happens when ash gets wet. That gray slurry when rain hits a cold fire pit. The dark, slightly slimy residue on your hands after handling damp ash. That slick, almost soapy feeling. That's not your imagination. When water passes through wood ash, it dissolves the potassium compounds inside and carries them into solution. The resulting liquid is alkaline, enough to begin breaking down fats on contact, which is, at a molecular level, exactly what soap does. The reaction is called saponification. Fat meets alkali. They break apart and reassemble into two things: soap, the fatty acid, salt that cleans, and glycerin, the moisturizing byproduct that expensive handmade soaps advertise as a selling point. That reaction has been happening wherever ash met rain and fat met water for as long as fire has existed. Around 5,000 years ago, people noticed it and started doing it on purpose. The oldest documented soap recipe was recorded in Sumer around 2800 BCE. Ash and rendered fat, combined and heated. The Egyptians documented it. The Romans scaled it. By the Norse era, soap making from wood ash was so embedded in daily life that the word lye, the English word for the alkaline liquid that makes soap possible, comes directly from the Proto-Germanic root meaning to wash. The chemistry was the same. The ash was the same. The fat was the same. The only thing that changed over 5,000 years is the jar you store it in. Here's what you need. And this is genuinely it. Wood ash, hardwood specifically. Oak, hickory, maple, beech. Hardwood burns hotter and cleaner and produces ash with a higher concentration of potassium salts. You want the fine, pale gray powder from a fully burned fire, not the dark, chunky charcoal from an incomplete burn. Sift out any large black pieces. The whiter and finer the ash, the stronger your lye will be. Rainwater or distilled water, not tap water. It has minerals that interfere with the leaching process. A bucket left outside does the job. Free. Fat. Rendered tallow or lard produces the most reliable soap with good lather. Olive oil makes a gentler soap. Coconut oil makes a harder, higher lathering one. Whatever you have. Warmed until liquid. A wooden, plastic, or stainless steel container for leaching. Not aluminum. Lye dissolves aluminum and produces hydrogen gas. Important. Rubber gloves and a bottle of vinegar kept close by. Not optional. Lye is genuinely caustic. It will start saponifying the oils in your skin on contact, which is as unpleasant as it sounds. Vinegar neutralizes it immediately. Gloves on every time you handle the lye. That's it. Here's how it goes together. Fill your leaching container loosely with hardwood ash. Line the bottom with a piece of cloth or straw to act as a filter, and create a small drain hole at the base so the liquid can drip into a collection vessel below. Pour rainwater slowly over the ash, let it percolate down and drip out the bottom. That dark, tea-colored liquid with a slightly slick feel is your lye. Pour it through the ash 2 or 3 more times to increase its concentration. Now here's the test the Vikings used, and the one that still works perfectly today. Drop a fresh egg into the lye solution. If it sinks, the lye is too weak. Run it through the ash again. If it floats with roughly 1/4 of its surface above the liquid, the concentration is right. If it bobs very high, dilute it with a little water. A raw potato works the same way. Original quality control for a process that predates chemistry labs by 5,000 years. Once your lye passes the test, combine it with your fat. Working quantities for a first batch. Enough for roughly a quart jar of finished soap. 2 cups of rendered fat, warmed to around 40 to 50 degrees Celsius, just above body temperature. 2/3 of a cup of lye solution. That's the traditional 3-to-1 ratio by volume. Pour the lye slowly into the warm fat. Never the other way around. Always lye into fat. Stir constantly. The mixture will cloud and thicken almost immediately. Heat gently over low heat, stirring regularly. This is the hot process. You're cooking the saponification, rather than waiting weeks for it to happen at room temperature. Give it several hours. The mixture moves through stages: waxy, then grainy, then glossy and paste-like, like thick mashed potato. When a small piece on your tongue gives a faint zap, like touching a weak battery, saponification is nearly complete. When the zap disappears entirely, it's done. Here's the one thing people get wrong the first time. They expect it to turn into a hard bar. It won't. Wood ash lye is potassium-based, and potassium soap is soft. what you'll have is a smooth, scoopable paste that goes in a jar. That's correct. That's what it's supposed to be. Scoop a small amount onto your hands, work it into a lather with water, and wash. If you want something firmer, add 2 tablespoons of plain table salt in the last 30 minutes of cooking. The sodium partially displaces the potassium, making the soap less water-soluble and firmer. Press it into a mold, let it cure 2 to 4 weeks, and it firms further as water evaporates. Documented technique from soap-making manuals of the 1700s. Store in a glass jar or wooden mold lined with parchment. Not aluminum, not tin. Now here's my personal version, the one I actually use. Once the soap is cooked and still warm off the heat, I stir in a small handful of dried mint leaves ground to a rough powder. Mint grows like it's trying to take over my garden. Plant it once and you'll have more than you know what to do with for the rest of your life. It adds a faint natural scent and a slight texture I've come to prefer over smooth commercial soap. I also add dried lavender. I planted it once about 10 years ago and now I have a full patch along the south side of the house. Lavender has documented natural antimicrobial properties. Not a folk claim, actual pharmacological activity, which complements what the soap is already doing and leaves the skin genuinely good rather than stripped. The combination is what I use for shaving. I'll say this directly, nothing I have ever paid for has left my face feeling the way this does. The glycerin formed during saponification stays in the soap instead of being extracted like it is in commercial bars. That's the difference you feel. If you don't have mint or lavender, 5 drops of each as essential oil, stirred in at the same final stage, gets you essentially the same result. Available at any health food store or on Amazon for a few dollars that will last years of batches. Your soap, your scent, that's the point. And before I get to the closer, there's one more reason I make this myself that I'd be doing you a disservice not to mention. If you've been paying any attention at all to what goes into commercial soap and personal care products, you already know this is bad. Parabens, phthalates, synthetic fragrances, sodium lauryl sulfate, triclosan, these are not obscure fringe concerns. They are documented endocrine disruptors and hormone mimickers that appear on ingredient lists of products people use on their skin every single day. Your skin is not a barrier that stops everything. It's a membrane. What you put on it absorbs into your bloodstream. That's the same mechanism behind nicotine patches and hormone therapy creams. It works because skin absorbs, and the average person applies somewhere between 9 and 15 personal care products daily, according to the Environmental Working Group, exposing themselves to over 100 unique chemical ingredients before they leave the house in the morning. I'm not telling you to be afraid. I'm telling you that knowing how to make your own soap from 2 ingredients you already have means you know exactly what's in it. Nothing hidden. Nothing with a 12-syllable name you can't pronounce. Fat and ash. The same 2 things that kept people clean for 5,000 years before a laboratory got involved. And that's also why I make my own deodorant. But that's a different video. The thing that keeps sitting with me is how completely this got replaced. Not because it stopped working, but because someone figured out how to sell you the alternative. Commercial soap production using refined sodium hydroxide began in earnest in the early 19th century. By the mid-1800s, Procter & Gamble, founded in Cincinnati in 1837, had industrialized it into millions of identical bars. By 1879, Ivory Soap was advertising that it floated. By the early 20th century, making soap from ash had drifted from common household skill to something eccentric, then forgotten. The ash from your fireplace still contains exactly the same compounds it always did. The fat in your kitchen still saponifies the same way it did in Sumer. The egg test still works. The Zap test still works. The raw materials are in your house right now, and they always have been. I don't know what your situation is or why you're watching this. Maybe you want to close one more loop towards self-sufficiency. Maybe soap is the prep item you hadn't thought about yet. Maybe you just like knowing how things actually work and ended up here at midnight following a question you couldn't stop pulling on. It doesn't matter. It works either way. Now you know how. Take care and see you in the next one.